He's known as a legendary warrior who saved the world. But the truth, he's actually the laziest guy you'll ever meet. He doesn't train, he doesn't care, and he'd rather nap than fight. But when he's pushed too far, that's when the real monster shows up. This isn't a story about a hardworking hero. It's about a man who doesn't try and still beats everyone. At the beginning of this manhwa, we are introduced to a scene set in a Chinese village. An old man sits calmly on the ground, his demeanor composed as he addresses a curious visitor. "You said you want to know about Yonho?" he asks, his tone both amused and intrigued. This old man is none other than Master Mu-san, a respected living Buddha known for his wisdom. Standing before him is a girl with long black hair, her eyes filled with determination as she answers. "Yes, that's right," she further explains. "I'm compiling materials to document his history for future generations to understand." Master Mu-san chuckles softly, waving his folding fan as if recalling a distant memory. "Ho ho, Yonho, the radiant martial sovereign. Yonho," he murmurs. His calm expression doesn't waver as he speaks of Yonho's benevolent nature. "He was a very upright and kind-hearted man. Surely the Buddha must have sent him to us." The girl smiles and replies, "Just as I thought." Then what was he like in his everyday life? Suddenly, the old man's expression changes. He trembles, his eyes glow wildly, and veins bulge across his forehead. His smirk is unsettling as he yells, "Fuck it, I can't do this." Confused, the girl steps back and asks, "Excuse me, what do you mean by that?" Moments later, she's forcefully kicked out of the temple, clearly unwelcome. The man who expelled her yells angrily, "Why Yonho this? Why Yonho that?" This man is Supreme Elder Ping Dojak of the Hubei Ping clan. He seethes, "Why did that wretched, trashy human come here? Scatter salt all around this place." Shocked, the girl mutters, "Why Yonho, the radiant martial sovereign. A legendary figure who ended the chaotic era. A true gentleman, a hero praised throughout the world. Some call him the greatest of all time. Others call him the greatest chivalrous warrior." As she runs away, she thinks, "Why does everyone avoid talking about him?" Her curiosity only deepens. "As a historian, I have a duty to document the hidden sides of history," she thinks. "Today, I may finally uncover the real reason." She meets another old man who bursts into laughter upon hearing her story. "So you were chased away from the Hubei Ping clan too?" He belongs to the beggar sect and is known as the divine mad dog. She sighs yes, and their responses were all the same. The moment I mentioned Yonho, the old man smiles knowingly and says, "Of course they'd react like that." The girl is puzzled and asks, "Pardon?" The old man then declares, "That man Yonho was the absolute worst kind of person." He begins to tell her the truth, starting from 100 years ago in Guangdong's Y clan. The young boy lies lazily on a bed, his eyes wide open as he gazes at the morning sun. "I want to become the strongest," he mutters sleepily. This is the 12-year-old Yonho. Born into a martial family, he dreams of becoming the greatest warrior under the heavens. Raised with the ideals of chivalry, he understands that the fastest path to greatness requires relentless effort. Eyes closed and still lying in bed, he says, "Yet no matter how gifted you are, nothing comes without hard work and effort." Yet for someone with such strong will, one issue persists, his habit of procrastinating. "Effort is the only true way forward, but it's too late to begin today," he groans. Looking out the window, he sees the sun going down and birds flying. Finally, he sits up calmly and stares out, only to flop back into bed seconds later. "What a shame," he mumbles, curling up under the blanket again. "Today was supposed to be the day I laid the foundation to become the best." Sighing, he adds, "Well, I'll sleep soundly tonight and train tomorrow." Just then, footsteps approach his room. An angry voice yells, "Get up." The voice gets louder. "I said get up." Yonho slowly opens his eyes and says, "Oh, you're here." Standing at the door is the clan patriarch Jianghin. Also known as the righteous chivalrous swordsman, Jianghin stares at him furiously and asks, "Do you know what time it is?" Yonho shrugs and replies, "I saw the sun." Jianghin glares and shouts, "Yet you're still lying on your bed." Yonho responds, "Because the sun is going down." His father snaps, "Do you know how long you've been holed up in this room?" Yonho, rubbing his eyes, says tiredly, "Was it 2 days, maybe 3? "No, I think it's 2. Jianghin, now trembling with rage, yells, "It's been 4 days, you useless brat, 4 days under a blanket." He scolds, "Even a boar would flip from sweat after 3 days of lying still." Yonho grins cheerfully and says, "That's why I get up every now and then, don't worry about me." His relaxed response only fuels his father's fury. Veins bulging, Jianghin is practically steaming. Yonho, sensing danger, nervously adds, "I actually tried to train." And his father demands. Yonho sheepishly explains, "Every time I opened my eyes, the sun was already setting." Jianghin raises an eyebrow. Yonho continues, "When the sun sets, you have to sleep. That way you can wake up early to train." His logic is absurd, yet he smiles like it's wisdom. Jianghin explodes in rage. "You freaking brat, today I'll fix that rot attitude of yours for good." He grabs Yonho and starts thrashing him around the room. "In the great Guangdong Y household, I will straighten you out," he roars. The sun continues to set. Later that evening, Jianghin sits in the clan office, exhaling deeply. Administrator Zhou Bang approaches and says, "Is this about the second young master again?" Jianghin sighs, "Who else would I be worried about?" Zhou Bang assures, "Don't worry, sir. He'll mature soon enough." Jianghin puts a hand to his face, burdened by guilt. He is the father of 2 sons and 1 daughter. Years ago, he left on a martial dual pilgrimage just after Yonho turned 2. His wife was pregnant then, and they planned to name the unborn child Suryeon. His wife's name is Han Sang-ah. The eldest son is Sanho, and the second son is Yonho. At that time, Jianghin thought he'd be gone only 2 years. However, various incidents delayed his return by 8 long years. Though he earned the honorary title of righteous chivalrous swordsman, the cost was steep. When he returned, his once gentle wife had become fiercer than a tiger. His beloved son, whom he expected to grow up fine, had turned into a lazy sloth. Meanwhile, Yonho lies back on the bed, laughing to himself. Bang, trying to console him, says, there must still be a way. Jianghin asks, what way? Bang reminds him, have you forgot? He will be returning soon. Jianghin looks puzzled and then realizes, smiling, oh right. Bang confirms, yes, after 3 years, he will finally be back from the martial academy. Jianghin's smile turns serious. Yes, why San? There's one person Yonho is actually afraid of. Suddenly, Yonho gets chills and mutters, why am I suddenly getting goosebumps? He feels someone's presence and turns. Standing silently behind him is Sanho, his older brother. Yonho blinks and says, oh brother. Sanho looks down at him with a cold gaze. How long have you been asleep? He asks. Yonho, playing dumb, replies, when did you get here? Sanho repeats, I asked you first. Yonho nervously scratches his head. He stammers. Sanho remains serious. Yonho rushes to explain. No, it's not what you think. I trained early this morning. I really did. He adds frantically, I just took a nap because I got tired. It's true. While thinking, damn it, when did he get back? Sanho asks calmly, you trained? Yonho nods. Sanho says, then show me. Use a technique to split that candle into two. Yonho is stunned. Huh? He asks. Sanho says, let's see how much you've improved over the past 3 years. Sanho stands behind him, arms crossed. Yonho, scratching his head, hesitates while gripping his sword. What are you doing? Go ahead, Sanho says sternly. Yonho replies, I mean, we're indoors. It could be dangerous. Sanho shouts angrily, I'll take care of it. Just show me what you've got. Yonho reluctantly agrees. Closing his eyes, he mutters, here goes nothing. Holding his sword, he performs the soaring dragon technique. He moves calmly, almost gracefully, like a master. Sanho watches with disbelief as Yonho completes the technique and looks at the candle. The candle remains untouched. Yonho gulps and says, I screwed up. Sanho sighs, 3 years have passed. He adds, that's more than enough time to master a sword technique and move on. Sanho walks away and says, but you're the same cotton-headed brat you were 3 years ago. That evening, the family gathers around the dinner table. Yonho frowns, thinking, I'm going to get indigestion, I'm sure of it. Their father asks Sanho, how is life at the martial academy? Sanho replies, it's fine. Jianghin follows up, have you encountered any difficulties? Sanho answers, if there were no hardships, it wouldn't be training, they're essential for growth. Jianghin says, you suffered a lot during my absence. Sanho responds, you had it harder, father, being away for so long. Jianghin then asks, are there any issues? Sanho sets his chopsticks down and replies, there is one. Both parents are startled. His mother asks, what is it? Sanho calmly says, it's about Yonho. Everyone turns to Yonho in shock. He thinks, what about me? I'm screwed. Sanho continues, we need to bring Yonho to my martial academy. Yonho's mouth drops open. The scene shifts back to the present. The old man talking to the girl says, even Master Mu-san and Ping Dojuk grind their teeth at the mention of Wai Yonho's name. He laughs and concludes, because that day when Wai Yonho left his house for the academy, his great history truly began. Back then, no one imagined this lazy boy would one day shake the entire world. At that very moment, Wai Yonho found himself reluctantly heading toward the martial academy. Half forced into going, sitting on the horse, he looked back and saw his sister, Wai Suryeon, barely holding herself together. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and with a desperate voice she pleaded, don't go, please don't go. Her emotions overflowed, but she couldn't stop him no matter how much she wanted to. His father, oddly enough, burst into laughter and shouted, come back, like it was all a joke to him. Meanwhile, his mother spoke more tenderly, her voice soft and worried as she said, take care of yourself. Though the family seemed a little upset, no one really made an effort to stop him from leaving. Calmly seated on the horse, Yonho responded with a shout, don't cry, I'll be back soon. Trying to be cheerful, his sister waved her hand, forcing a smile, and yelled, good bee Tilda. His father kept laughing uncontrollably, while his mother, growing annoyed, snapped, stop laughing already. And just like that, without any dramatic goodbyes, the journey to the martial academy began for them. Well, at least it was smooth for Wai Sanho, who looked totally comfortable with the ride. Meanwhile, Yonho was struggling behind him, slumped over the horse like he was lying in bed. Barely lifting his head to peek at the road ahead, he groaned, are we almost there yet? Sanho, riding with confidence, didn't even turn around and answered, there's 10 more days left. Yonho blinked in disbelief as sweat rolled down his face and he muttered, 10 days? Annoyed, Sanho replied, we would have made it in 5 if you knew how to ride a horse. Frustrated, Yonho yelled back, I told you, I've never ridden one before in my life. Sanho shrugged and said calmly, I wasn't blaming you, I was just answering your question. Yonho narrowed his eyes and snapped, you are blaming me though. At that moment, with an exhausted expression while bouncing on the horse, Yonho complained again, let's rest. Do you know how steep this hill is? I'm so tired. He groaned out loud. My back and butt feel like they're going to explode from this, he added dramatically. Then suddenly, pointing toward the distance, he shouted, look over there, those people are resting too. Sanho narrowed his eyes, instantly sensing something odd about that group of people resting by the tree. Without another word, he jumped off his horse to check. While Yonho just looked confused, he asked, where are you going? What's going on? But Sanho didn't reply right away. Moments later, he stood over the bodies, inspecting them closely, his face turning grim and focused. Yonho approached, still puzzled, and asked, "What are you doing?" Sanho replied firmly, "We're too late." His tone was low, serious. Looking down, he said quietly, "They're all dead, every one of them." Yonho's eyes widened in terror and he screamed, "What?" Sanho crouched near the corpses and pointed to their wounds. "Look at this," he said firmly. "This technique is called the flower indulging palm," he added, his voice turning cold. Yonho stammered in confusion, "A flower indulging palm." "Indulging in flowers," Sanho nodded grimly. "It used to be crimson flower palm, but that changed for a dark reason." He continued, "A rapist named Seo Juak used this technique to commit vile crimes in the mountains. Because of him, people started calling it the flower-indulging palm." Sanho said through clenched teeth. Yonho backed away slightly and asked, "Wait, are you saying he's somewhere around here?" His brother's eyes darkened as he looked at the forest ahead. Sanho's fists clenched and he said, "He targets women climbing alone. These bodies are evidence of his ambush." His voice full of rage, he added, "That means there's still a woman in danger somewhere nearby." Without waiting, Sanho leapt into the air like a hero. Flying forward through the trees, "I'll be back. Stay here," he shouted as he vanished into the forest canopy. Yonho stared in disbelief and shouted, You're leaving me here with the corpses?" The forest grew quiet again. The only sound was the wind rustling the leaves. Left alone, Yonho glanced at the dead bodies and muttered nervously, "I'm so screwed." Dark clouds rolled in, the sky turning black, and thunder echoed above the mountains. Frustrated, Yonho screamed up at the sky, "Liar, what's taking him so long? He should have brought me." He began to worry. Did something happen? He wouldn't be this late unless, he thought anxiously. Rage built up inside him and he shouted, "Ah!" at the storm, fists clenched in frustration. Then calming down slightly, he grabbed the horse's reins and muttered, "I need to do something now. I can't just stand here," he continued. "If I loiter around, I'll become some tiger's next meal." Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck somewhere behind him, the flash lighting up the whole mountain. Yonho screamed, flinching at the noise, then stared up as the rain began to pour from above. Looking up with frustration, he groaned, I'm really completely screwed." Soaked to the bone, he pushed the horse from behind, struggling to guide it up the muddy slope. His back ached, his hands slipped, but he kept moving forward. "Ugh, how did I end up like this?" he muttered in exhaustion. He then sighed and said, "I can't leave the corpses. They might get eaten by animals. But I also can't bury them in this rain," he muttered, feeling helpless. "I need to find some kind of shelter to wait this storm out," he decided. He kept pushing the horse, trying to guide it toward higher ground. But even the horses seemed fed up and started getting aggressive toward him. "Why aren't you listening to me?" he asked the horse, clearly at the end of his patience. The horse kicked him hard, launching him off the side of the mountain trail. He tumbled over sharp stones, crashing and rolling until he finally landed on a pile of leaves. Groaning in pain, Yonho clutched his back and shouted, "That damned horse." As he sat up, rubbing his bruised side, he noticed something in the rocks nearby. "What's that?" he said, eyes squinting in the rain. "A cave." His face lit up with joy and relief. "Nice shelter from the storm," he exclaimed happily. The horses followed him and stopped near the cave entrance with a loud snort. Yonho smiled as they approached. "You guys," he muttered, tying their ropes tightly. "Ugh, I can't even hit them. They probably don't deserve it anyway," he added. Looking around the cave, he sighed and said, "What a mess. This is why I prefer staying home." Then he remembered, "I left a mark outside the cave, so hopefully Sanho can find me." Turning toward the dark forest, he mumbled, "Meanwhile," and with a tired expression, he laid down on the cave floor like it was a mattress. "I don't know anymore. I'm just gonna sleep," he said, his eyes already closing. He murmured softly, "I hope nothing happened to my brother." Barely staying awake, he whispered, "No, he's strong. Sure he'll be." And then he fell into deep sleep before he could finish the thought. Night passed, and even as the sun rose and set again, Yonho was still sleeping. And a glowing blue light appeared inside the cave, swirling like a mist around his body. It enveloped him gently, lifting him without waking him up, and carried him toward the wall. The wall shimmered, then opened like a hidden portal, and the light passed through it with Yonho. He stirred slightly, finally opening his eyes, sensing something strange had happened. Looking around, he muttered, "Where am I?" Calmly observing his surroundings, he added, "This still looks like the cave I was in. Did I roll in deeper, or did something else happen while I was asleep?" Then an unknown voice echoed around him. "Fated human." The sound made Yonho freeze in fear, his body trembling as he fell to the ground. He looked around wildly and asked, "Who said that?" But there was no one in sight. A light blue sphere floated down from above, glowing gently as it hovered before him. It spoke again, "Welcome to the fated place, successor of my radiant sword." Yonho stared at it wide-eyed and asked, "Is this glowing thing what you're speaking through?" The sphere answered, "Yes, I've transcended the restraints of a physical body. I exist beyond time itself. Accept my will and rule over the world," it said, its voice both calm and commanding. Yonho screamed, "A ghost." Recoiling in fear, the sphere calmly replied, "Do not be afraid. I am already dead. Only my will remains here. You've been waiting for someone like you," it continued. "So accept my legacy without hesitation." Yonho narrowed his eyes and thought, "Wait, this situation feels weirdly familiar." In a whisper he muttered, "A cave without people, an old man's will." Then it clicked, and he thought excitedly, "Is this a fateful chance?" With a wide smile, Yonho laughed and said, "The heavens must be rewarding me for being a good person. I won't even need to go to the martial training hall if I can get strong right here." The sphere continued, "There is no time. Inherit my sword and restore the world's moral balance. I'll teach you the radiant sword, train endlessly and become its master." Yonho nodded. "Of course, okay," he replied, motivated by the idea of instant power. Then the sphere added, "You should be talented enough if you have my blood." But the next part hit Yonho like a brick. "If you train here for 30 years, you'll replicate my techniques." Yonho blinked hard, jaw dropping. 30 years? "Yes, just 30 years, the sphere repeated without hesitation. Yonho backed away slowly and said, "Wait, I don't think this fate is meant for me." He laughed awkwardly and added, "Look for the next person, I'm out." The sphere spun in confusion, asking, "What?" Yonho laughed again and shouted, "Yeah, Tilda, I'd rather let this go than stay here for 30 years. And so, the story cuts back to an old man telling this tale with a ridiculous smile. He chuckled and said, "But that ridiculous meeting is how the loser, why Yonho, came to be so strong." With laughter bubbling out of him like a child who just won the lottery, Yonho grinned ear to ear. "Yes, I don't think this is fate. Seriously, go find someone else," he shouted gleefully. Still caught between disbelief and amusement, he barely held himself together and turned on his heel. "Then goodbye," he yelled behind him as he bolted from the scene with surprising speed, just as he was making his great escape. A voice thundered behind him. "Wait," the old man shouted, causing Yonho to slow his stride, curiosity forcing him to glance back. The old man, eyes wide and flustered, added, "Wait just 1 second. That persistent spirit's name?" Beak Muhen, though calling him old man was practically a profession at this point. Yonho narrowed his eyes, still unsure of Muhen's intentions. Something wasn't sitting right with him. With his temper flaring, Yonho shouted, "I was right all along, you're totally a scammer." Muhen's face twisted, his voice rising with indignation. "Scammer? How dare you accuse me of that?" Yonho pointed an accusatory finger right at him. "You pretended to be one thing, and when that didn't work, boom, new personality." Muhen stared at him with burning eyes. "I wasn't pretending. I really am a spirit who left his body." Yonho paused, his usual sass gone for a second. "A spirit who left his body?" he asked quietly, his suspicion boiling over. Yonho did what any reasonable manhwa protagonist might do. He swung a fist. It passed right through Muhen's face like he was punching air. Yonho froze. Muhen raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" Muhen asked. Not even fazed by the attempted ghost smackdown, Yonho screamed, completely losing it. Why you're a real ghost?" Muhen sighed, exasperated. "Not a ghost. This is called the spirit transmission arts," he explained. "It's a technique only martial artists at the highest level can perform." Yonho scoffed. "Yeah, well, we just call that being a ghost," he muttered. Muhen flared with frustration. "I said I'm not a ghost," he snapped, his aura pulsing. Elsewhere, night had fallen in the city, and the story returned to an older man near a fire. A girl sat beside him, her eyes reflecting the flames, still listening intently to the tale being told. "That was how Yonho met his master," the storyteller said, voice soft but firm. The girl whispered, "Spirit transmission arts. Something like that actually exists." With the confident tone of someone who'd seen too much, the old man replied, "It's real, all right. Only martial artists of the highest level can use it. Very few even know of it." The girl tilted her head. "Then who's one martial artist who can actually use that ability?" The old man gave a knowing smile. "Have you heard of the Sword Emperor?" he asked quietly. She gasped. "Of course, the strongest man in history. The Beak clan's greatest swordsman." He nodded. "Yes, Beak Muhen, the Radiant Sword, the one later known as the Sword Emperor." The girl blinked, still trying to connect the dots. "But didn't he live like 300 years ago?" The old man gave a deep sigh. "That's right, a forgotten generation, but the stories are true. It's true that he made Yonho who he became," the man continued. The girl, enchanted by the tale, asked, "Then Yonho must have begged to become his disciple, right?" The storyteller chuckled, barely able to contain it. Yonho? No, it was the opposite. Beak Muhen, having waited 300 years without a single descendant finding him, was desperate. He shouted at Yonho, "You must become my disciple," as if the fate of the world depended on it. Meanwhile, Yonho replied with a mix of reluctance and irritation. "Why are you throwing a tantrum? I'm not even part of the Beak clan," he argued. "I really can't learn from you. I'm leaving." He huffed, backing away again. Elsewhere, Muhen's spirit pulsed with quiet rage, his blue aura glowing with unspoken pressure. "Did you really think I'd let you go so easily?" he whispered, almost too softly to hear. Suddenly, a massive stone gate dropped in front of Yonho with a thunderous crash. Yonho stopped dead in his tracks, staring at the impossibly thick obstacle with wide, confused eyes. Muhen laughed with eerie satisfaction. "What do you think? Super thick stone gate. With your current skill level, you'll never lift or break it." He then added with glee, "But if you learn my martial arts, you'll slice it like paper." Yonho sighed, reached into his robe, and pulled out the tiniest sword imaginable. "Haya, there's no ping it," he muttered. Muhen blinked. "I said you can't cut it like that," but Yonho simply dropped to the ground and started digging. "What are you doing?" Muhen asked, baffled. "You see," Yonho replied, "I'm digging a hole under it. No matter how strong it is, it's still stone. I'll grind it down with metal. Give me a year or two. I'll be out of here eventually." "You'll really do that for a year or two?" Muhen asked, stunned. Yonho smirked, coming from someone who talked about training me for 30 years. Myuhan groaned, nearly collapsing from stress. This kid is like if a Stan Saitama had a baby. This bastard, a madman, I can't even beat him to death, he muttered. Then Myuhan shouted, just try learning, I won't disappoint you. Yonho shrugged. I still don't like you, Myuhan pleaded. Fine, I'll let you leave after 20 years. 20? Nah, Yonho said. Make it 3, I'll consider it. 3 years, Myuhan exploded. You want to learn my martial arts in 3 years? Even if Zhang Sanfeng came back to life, he wouldn't manage that. Yonho raised an eyebrow. Oh, then I guess we're not meant to be. He turned and resumed digging, which only made Myuhan lose his last nerve. 5 YARS, Myuhan shouted. I'll make you the strongest martial artist in the world in 5 years. Yonho paused. The strongest in the world in 5 years. He considered the idea, noting how vivid Myuhan's spirit was. Maybe he's telling half the truth, Yonho thought. If he's even 20% legit, this could be huge. His expression shifted. Yeah, let's become a master using this once-in-a-lifetime chance, he decided. Fine, I'll try it, Yonho finally agreed, sealing the deal. Back at the fire, the storyteller grinned. Of course, Yonho didn't know he was the Sword Emperor yet, but Myuhan was cursed with terrible luck. The disciple he waited centuries for was that guy. Back in the palace, Myuhan was livid. Hurry up and wake up, you bastard, he roared. Yonho yawned. So tired you don't sleep, huh? That's right, you're a ghost or spirit, whatever. Well, I'm human. Humans need sleep, you know that, right? Myuhan cursed the heavens. All right, fine, let's train already, calmly, Yonho muttered. The disciple he waited centuries for turned out to be a lazy bastard. Training right after I wake up, seriously, he groaned. Myuhan panicked. He slept all day and practiced one move. At this rate, we'll need 50 years, Yonho asked. Isn't there an easier way to learn? Myuhan barked. This is the easy way. Annoyed, Yonho thought, if only he shut up more he'd be less annoying. HMPH. This is why I need a proper master. Furious, Myuhan nearly exploded. If I had a body, I'd collapse from chi deviation, he tried to calm himself. Wanting worldly success, passing on my martial arts, leaving my spirit like this, forced to endure this absurdity, he sighed. If I had a body, I'd beat him up first, then teach him. Yonho lay on the ground, groaning. Master, how did you even do that? Do what? Myuhan asked. Drop the stone gate. And don't tell me it was magic. Myuhan replied calmly. I pulled a string on a device I made in advance. But you don't have a body, Yonho insisted. Doesn't matter. I use psychic levitation chi alone, Myuhan explained. Then suddenly his eyes widened. He began laughing like a man possessed. Yonho backed away. What the? Are you okay, old man? I was too focused on not having a body. Myuhan shouted, still laughing. He continued muttering. Even without a body, I can move things. I can still do this. Just then, a small stone ball rolled toward Yonho's feet. Yonho stared at it, confused. What is that? Myuhan beamed. Thanks to you, I realized I can still move rocks. Yonho's eyes widened. He recognized that gleam in Myuhan's eyes. It was the gleam of chaos. If I can move rocks, I can do things like this. Myuhan shouted, Wait, master, let's talk this out. Yonho panicked, raising his arms for protection. Myuhan laughed like a lunatic, pelting him with stone balls, and that's how their training began, day and night, nonstop. During the day, Yonho learned swordsmanship until his limbs trembled with exhaustion. At night, they debated endlessly, refining techniques and concepts under starlight. Even in his sleep, Yonho trained using the dream mythic arts Myuhan passed down. His life became martial arts. His thoughts were swords. His dreams were battles. There was no time for laziness, no time for complaints. And just like that, 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. One day, Yonho walked toward the stone gate, this time taller, stronger, and wildly unrecognizable. With a deep breath, he gripped his sword. He lifted the gate like it was cardboard, revealing the world beyond. Fresh air greeted him, the sky opening above as if welcoming a new era. His hair was long, ragged. His clothes were torn. He looked like a hobo cosplaying Kenshin Himura, but his voice rang clear as he stepped outside. I'm finally out. One day ago, in the quiet stillness of early morning, Myuhan, the old martial arts master, stood beside Yonho's sleeping mat. His arms were crossed, face calm, but his eyes held a strange weight. He nudged the sleeping boy with his foot, a small frown forming. Wake up, he said, but Yonho, as always, resisted the morning like it was the final enemy of his life. Still half asleep, he groaned, let me sleep a bit more. His voice was low, stubborn, almost childlike. Eventually, with great reluctance, Yonho sat up, rubbing his eyes and yawning. Gosh, I said I'd sleep just a bit more, you don't believe me, he grumbled, his voice groggy with sleep. But as he looked up, something shifted in the air. Myuhan wasn't standing the way he usually did. There was no sharpness in his gaze, no usual grumbling or scolding. Yonho blinked, his eyes widening slightly. Huh, he muttered. Myuhan's voice came, simple but firm, come here. Yonho hesitated. This didn't feel like the start of another morning of training. What's going on? He stammered, his heart racing slightly as if it already knew something his mind couldn't catch. Myuhan looked ahead, not directly at him, and spoke with a weight Yonho had never heard before. I've practiced martial arts my entire life. My goal was to reach the end of it. I didn't bother with anything else. His voice was steady but distant, like he was speaking more to the past than the present. He took a breath, continuing, in my pursuit, I became a cranky old man, someone my clan kept at a distance. Yonho tilted his head, confused. This wasn't like Muhen at all. What's up with him today? He whispered under his breath. Muhen kept speaking, his tone now tinged with regret. When I think about it, it's obvious why no one came looking for me. I abandoned my family, my children, all for martial arts. I thought if I saw the end of it, I would have everything, but I was wrong. Yonho just stood there, confused and growing uneasy. Muhen smiled faintly, not with pride, but with a strange, quiet sorrow. Martial arts is what people do, but if you walk the path alone, it becomes meaningless. You helped me realize that. Yonho blinked. He didn't quite understand, but he felt the weight behind those words. Master, he murmured. Muhen now looked at him with a softness he'd never shown before. You were the first person I taught. At first, I was angry, annoyed. You were clumsy, loud, lazy. But then, watching you grow, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Happiness, joy, fondness. Panic stirred in Yonho's voice. What's going on, Master? You're acting like this is goodbye. Muhen nodded slowly, eyes clear. Yes, it's time. Yonho's heart sank, his eyes going wide. What are you saying? Are you kidding me? You said we trained for 30 years. It's only been 5. You have to stick around for at least 25 more. Muhen smiled softly. I did say that. Yonho sat down, his fists clenched. So what now? That was a lie. Muhen spoke gently. The internal chi I gave you in the form of an elixir. It was meant so you could survive here without food, but it's not easy to maintain that chi. It consumed the last of my strength. His voice trembled now, though he tried to hide it. I have no more power left. It's time to say goodbye. Yonho stood up quickly, eyes burning. Why didn't you tell me? If you had, I would have gone out, found food, come back. We could have kept training. Muhen smiled as if remembering something far away. Had you left, I know you would have returned. I understand how you feel. He paused, then added with peace in his voice, I enjoyed the time we had. I wanted to see you travel the world, but this is fine too. He turned toward Yonho and said gently, in my eyes, I can already see you traveling across the world, facing new lands, meeting new people. Go, see the world, keep it inside you. If you do, everything else will follow. But before seeing the world, see people, don't become like I did. Yonho's voice was trembling now. Master, Muhen continued, while looking up, I never saw what was beneath me. Don't make that mistake, even if I never see you again, even if the world forgets me. I will still live on in your movements, in your swordsmanship. Yonho's voice broke as he shouted, you can't leave already. I haven't learned everything. No. Even if I don't learn another thing, just stay a little longer. One more day, please. But as his voice rose, Muhen's body began to fade, blue aura swirling around him like smoke in the wind. Just be happy, Muhen whispered, his smile calm. Yonho rushed toward him, but it was no use. His hands passed through him. He was vanishing. Yonho dropped to his knees, tears in his eyes. Master, you could have told me, even a little earlier. A little later, Yonho stumbled upon a cloth with something written on the back. His veins bulged as anger surged through him. So this is why he didn't say anything ahead of time, he shouted. Clenching the cloth, he whispered, when did he prepare all of this? Damn old man, you couldn't have left in a more dramatic way. He read the message again. Before disappearing, Beak Muhen had written, to summarize, Yonho's martial arts, even after 5 years, was incomplete. Knowing Yonho wouldn't train properly after his disappearance, Beak Muhen installed a special condition. The inner elixir Yonho had consumed would help his martial arts improve, but only if his progress matched the speed of the chi. If it didn't, the chi would consume him and he'd die. Yonho stared in disbelief. So if I slack off, I die? It ended with a short sentence. To put it simply, if you're lazy, brat, you die. Yonho's voice roared with frustration. That damned old man. He was up to no good until the very end. Then Muhen's final words echoed once again. So travel the world, see things, feel them, learn from them, don't stay small, become someone big. Yonho wiped his tears, murmuring, damned master. Somewhere in the city, another message from Muhen appeared. The first place you must go is Rulin. Find the world's greatest scholar and stay with him. You'll understand something. After Rulin, Yonho sighed heavily, looking to the sky. Wait, just how many places are you telling me to visit? Back at the palace, as Yonho stretched and looked at the path ahead, he whispered, I was going to go anyway, but I'll head out after finishing what I need to, so don't worry too much, mother, father. He stood before the entrance to the old cave, bowed deeply, and said, I won't be coming back. So just be aware of that. He's bothering me until the very end. Taking a deep breath, he muttered, gosh, but where is Rulin anyway? Suddenly, the entrance to Muhen's cave shimmered and Yonho started laughing, first softly, then uncontrollably, like someone who had finally gone mad from emotions too big to carry. Muhen's voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere, filled with laughter. You little brat, if you don't learn about the world, you'll dry up like a mummy and die. What kind of martial arts lives in a place like this? His voice softened, almost kind. The world is too broad to let you waste yourself in some random cave. And your martial arts, it would be a waste, you bastard. As he faded once more, his final words rang out. Thanks to you, I was happy, so you be happy too. Yonho closed his eyes, felt the wind brush past him, and murmured, the smell of grass. Time passed. Eventually, Yonho reached a city or maybe a village called Kaifeng. His face was thin, body worn. Each step told the story of the hardships he had endured. He approached someone and asked, excuse me, is this Kaifeng? The stranger blinked, trying to understand who this ragged young man was. Yes, and I'm Jang Il, branch leader of the beggar sect here. Yonho replied, I came because I need to ask something. Jang Il looked him over and asked bluntly, money. Yonho blinked. Do I need to pay? Jang Il scoffed. Of course, nothing in this world is free. As he got a closer look, Jang Il thought to himself, his voice sounds like he's maybe 20, but his face looks 50. He looks more like a ghost than a person. He continued, honestly, I'd help for free. We're in the same business after all, but rules are rules. Yonho furrowed his brows. Same business, Jang Il nodded. Yeah, we're both beggars. Yonho stepped back in offense. How do I look like a beggar? Jang Il stared at him flatly. You clearly are one. He added, if you don't have money, I can't help you. Go earn some, then come back. Furious, Yonho said. Why would I beg when I'm not a beggar? Jang Il pointed at him. It's not that beggars beg. Once you beg, you become a beggar. You could make good money just by sitting with a basket in front of you. Why waste that talent? Suddenly, something clicked in Jang Il's mind. Hey, wanna work with me? Yonho squinted. Work with what? In the next scene, Yonho was staring at coins piled in front of him, completely unimpressed. Meanwhile, Jang Il was laughing like a man possessed. To earn 6 months' worth of operating costs in just half a day, people outside the building heard him yelling. The god of wealth has come, the god of wealth has come. What's going on? One of them asked. His friend replied, apparently some pathetic beggar showed up. Jang Il was chewing on meat joyfully, then said, alright, so what do you want to know? Yonho, barely awake, muttered, a list of locations, hobbies, and specialties of famous scholars, and also blacksmiths. Easy, Jang Il said. Yonho started asking for more, but Jang Il interrupted. All of that? Seriously? Well, I did promise, so I'll tell you. Come back in 7 days. Later, Yonho was seen lying down, eyes closed. I've got nothing to do. I'll just stay here, he mumbled. Jang Il frowned. Stay here. Fine, then stay. A few days later, Jang Il regretted every word. One of his men burst in, panicked. Branch leader, there's trouble. What could possibly be troubling beggars? He asked. We're going to starve, the man cried. What? Jang Il shouted. In the next scene, people were pointing at them, yelling, buzz off, how dare you fake beggars try to beg here. Jang's man whispered urgently, this way, hurry. Jang Il, running with his men, shouted, what's going on? Then one of the rich townsfolk sneered, if you're going to be beggars, at least look the part. You look too poor. Ah, how pitiful. They threw coins. Eat something, you bastards. Jang Il stood frozen, jaw dropped. Meanwhile, Yonho just smirked. See, it's easy to make money. He looked off into the distance, taking over the beggar world, complete. In the next scene, Yonho lay flat on his back, staring up at the ceiling with an air of exaggerated calm. I'm thirsty, he said plainly, as if it were the most important problem in the world. Jang Il, already twitching from frustration, clenched his fists and shouted, hey, water, bring me water right now. One of his men rushed to obey, soon arriving with a wooden bowl filled with water. Yonho took one look at it and wrinkled his nose, then said while eyeing the bowl with disappointment, this bowl is dirty. Jang Il turned, eyes full of fury, and without hesitation punched the man who brought the water. Bring water in a new bowl, you stupid beggar, he roared, veins throbbing on his forehead. At that very moment, Yonho murmured under his breath, it's also lukewarm. Jang Il's patience completely snapped. He spun around, kicking 3 of his men out of sheer frustration, and yelled, go bring cold water from the damn mountains. How many times do I have to tell you idiots? Meanwhile, Yonho rolled slightly to one side and sighed, MMH, nice, how nice, like he was enjoying a relaxing vacation. Jang Il's fists tightened again as he grit his teeth and thought, damn it, I'm the branch leader of the beggar sect, and here I am playing the role of a servant for this stupid beggar. But if I kick him out, my guys will starve. Then, while gently massaging Yonho's back with forced calm, he thought, when is the damn information he requested going to arrive already? Yonho groaned a little and said, my back hurts. Jang's jaw twitched. Geez, that's no good. He replied, forcing concern into his voice. But in his head he groaned, we're all gonna end up dead at this rate. Just then one of his subordinates called out, branch leader, the information's here. Joy lit up Jang Il's eyes as he immediately turned toward the messenger and exclaimed, finally. But Yonho, sitting up and glancing at the report, said with a disappointed frown, is this all? You really want to sell this kind of junk for money? Jang's expression froze. Huh, what do you mean? Yonho snatched the paper. Give it here, he muttered, reading it carefully. His eyes scanned the contents and then his expression darkened. In his mind he cursed, are these idiots actually trying to get us all killed? This is only like half of what I asked for. Panic rose in his chest. This is bad, I need to act before this bastard loses it. Yonho tilted his head and asked, is it because I didn't pay you enough? In the next scene, Jang quickly grabbed Yonho by the sleeve and dragged him along. We can't have you begging on the streets. Come this way, he said nervously. Suddenly, a sharp female voice rang out. I'll give you information. Yonho turned his head to see a girl standing confidently. She smiled calmly and said, how rare to see you here, Foxdog. That girl was none other than Gui Nangnang, the Hao Sect's Kaifeng branch leader. Jang Il immediately bowed. I offer my greetings to branch leader Gui. Meanwhile, Yonho looked at him with amusement and muttered under his breath, Foxdog, Foxdog. Then, in a whisper only Jang could hear, Yonho grinned and said, is that your title? A dog, you little bitch, ha 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 ha. Jang gritted his teeth. This damned bastard, he thought angrily. I need information, Jang blurted out, clearly trying to change the subject. But Yonho kept whispering, bitch, bitch, completely disrupting the conversation. Nangnang raised an eyebrow and said, this is surprising. The beggar sect's Kaifeng branch leader coming to the Hao sect for information. We're rivals, you know, what brings you here? Jang, trying to remain calm, replied, I'm not asking on behalf of the beggar sect. I brought a customer here. Yonho continued mumbling in the background, bitch, bitch, with an infuriating smirk. Nangnang's expression shifted into one of fury. Are you kidding me right now? She hissed. Then she added, "It's not the beggar sect asking, but your client is a beggar. Are you insulting us, or is this some sort of provocation? We do not sell information to the beggar sect." Yonho finally chimed in, calm and unaffected. "I'm not from the beggar sect." She narrowed her eyes and said with rising anger, "If you keep insulting us like this, I'll have no choice but to take action. Please remember that we have pride." Yonho simply looked at her and said, "Isn't the Hao Sect supposed to be an intelligence organization?" Nang's face twitched. At that moment, Yonho, now wearing an incredibly careless expression, said, "But you don't even know whether I'm from the beggar sect or not. You make your living selling information and you can't even figure that out. You don't even have the basics down." That hit a nerve. Nang's face turned red. Furious, she summoned Gongmo. A dark smoke gathered beside her as a masked figure appeared. She asked sharply, "Who is he?" Gongmo replied, "We do not know his identity, but he is not affiliated with the beggar sect." Nang's expression dropped, now blushing in embarrassment and rage. Yonho smiled and said, "See, now you can sell me information, right?" Her lips curled into a smile full of rage. "No, I don't want to. Get out." Yonho shook his head, still smiling. "You don't have a business mindset at all. I'm offering to pay you and you still refuse. At this rate, the Hao Sect's future is looking grim." She was now visibly shaking, barely holding it together. Her voice trembled with fury as she spat. "You'd better watch that mouth of yours unless you want to see your limbs cut off." Yonho tilted his head slightly. "Well, I'm not wrong, am I, old lady?" Her rage exploded, veins bulging on her forehead. "Are you insulting us right now?" she shrieked. Without hesitation, she pointed to Gongmo and shouted, "Teach him a lesson." Gongmo responded, "Yes, ma'am." In a flash, he lunged at Yonho with deadly intent. Jang Il tried to intercept, but Yonho calmly placed a hand over Jang's mouth and said, "Move." The next moment, Gongmo flew backward, slammed into the ground with a thunderous impact. The ground shattered beneath him. One punch, everyone stood frozen in place. Nang's eyes widened in disbelief. "Why, you're a martial master?" she stuttered. Yonho looked slightly surprised himself. "Oh, sorry, it's just instinct. I counterattack automatically when someone tries to hit me. If I'd known you were going to attack, I would have gone easier." Jang stood frozen, thoughts spinning. "I figured he probably learned martial arts, but I didn't expect him to be this strong. No, he's basically a monster." Yonho looked off to the side and muttered, "This is all that old man's fault." Nang, still stunned, said, I didn't know you were such a prestigious customer." Yonho raised an eyebrow and replied, "What are you talking about? You've been speaking with me this whole time." She hesitated, then said, "In any case, it doesn't feel like you came here with good intentions." Jang Il stiffened beside her, sensing the tension growing again. He quickly added, "Why, you probably won't believe me, but we're really not here to fight. There was information the beggar sect couldn't get, so we came to ask for your help." Nang turned her eyes on him. "That's why you brought him here?" Jang nodded. "Yes." She crossed her arms. "You do know this is like bringing a tiger into a rabbit's den and asking for just a bit of fur, right?" Jang bowed deeply. "I know it's hard to believe, but I'm serious." Nang's eyes narrowed, but she finally said, "All right, I'll believe you." Jang sighed in relief and bowed again. "Thank you," she continued, "but giving you information is a separate matter. Your client hurt one of my people. There will need to be compensation for that." At that moment, Yonho stepped forward and said, "Compensation?" Her voice snapped back at him with rage. "There's a simple rule in the unorthodox world. Blood for blood, a life for a life." She raised her hand, and 4 more shadows emerged from the mist behind her. Yonho, unfazed, said, "Everyone here sure knows how to make a flashy entrance." Nang's voice grew cold. "I don't know why you're here, but since you hurt one of us, you won't be leaving unharmed." Yonho blinked slowly and replied, "Man, is it really that hard to understand? It was a mistake. I hit him lightly. He tried to hit me first." In her mind, Nang growled, "This skeleton-looking bastard." She then raised her voice and said, "In the unorthodox Muram world, the rules are simple. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." Yonho gave her a smirk. "That sounds like some lone shark nonsense." Jang panicked. "Hey, I told you to stop." But it was too late. Nang, now shaking with fury, shouted, "We're just going to take a bit of flesh from your face and be done with it." Yonho raised a hand. "Hey, sorry to break it to you." He pulled down his hood, showing his face. "But I don't really have any fat on my face. Haven't been eating properly lately." The murderous intent on Nang's face became clear. "Kill him," she screamed. Yonho tilted his head and asked, "Didn't you say you were just going to carve out a bit of flesh? Now you want to kill me? That's a lot of interest added." Scary. With blinding speed, he moved, deflecting, disarming, and devastating each of the 4 attackers with the calm ease of someone brushing dust off their shoulder. The ground trembled beneath his feet. When it was over, the shadows lay crumpled, groaning in defeat. Nang's eyes were wide open, her mouth agape. She was stunned, speechless. Yonho stood tall, arms crossed, and said with chilling calm, "Nobody move. I don't really want to kill anyone. Not yet." As Yonho stood amid the crushed stones and stunned silence after taking down the 4 elite shadows, the air felt heavier than before, thick with awe and disbelief, and his aura, calm yet overwhelmingly sharp, seemed to press down on everyone in the room like invisible blades. No one dared to speak, not even breathe too loud. Even Nang, the confident and fiery leader of the Hao Sect's Kaifeng branch, couldn't hide the shock in her eyes as she muttered under her breath, "His aura. Something else." Her voice was shaky, eyes wide, the tension around her jaw evident as she struggled to maintain her composure. And Yonho, standing still, relaxed but impossibly sharp, said with quiet confidence, My master once told me if someone's willing to attack once, they'll be willing to attack 3 or even 4 times. So I should never let that happen." He paused for a moment, letting the words land like a weight on everyone listening, then added with a small sigh, "I don't like that old man, but he's never said anything wrong." Those words sunk deep into Nang Nang's chest like a cold blade, and her pupils trembled slightly as she thought to herself, "I messed with the wrong person. He's not someone I can handle." And that thought echoed again and again in her head until the fear finally bloomed fully, and she continued thinking, "I need to get it together. If I mess up, this entire branch of the Hao Sect might be brought to ruin." Swallowing the knot in her throat, she took a small step forward and asked carefully, "What do you want?" And Yonho, still calm and composed, replied plainly, "Information." She raised an eyebrow, tension still running through her limbs, and asked again, "Yes, but what kind of information?" Before Yonho could speak, Jang Il stepped beside him and said, "I have the papers. I hope you can help fill in the empty spots." And he handed over the documents. Nang Nang took the papers, glanced through them, and her thoughts stuttered as she realized, this is it. They brought a monster like him too. The Hao Sect, because they couldn't solve such a simple matter. She looked up, baffled, but quickly masked it with professional composure and said aloud, "It's nothing difficult. I just need some time." "Can you wait?" Yonho nodded once and said, "Yes," and she added, "Then give me about 15 minutes. Then turning sharply, she shouted, "As for the beggar sect's branch leader, come see me." And as she disappeared inside, Yonho burst out laughing and pointed at Jang. "Your face looks like a dumpling. Did she beat you up?" Bruised and very much battered, Jang grunted, "Shut up." But Yonho only laughed harder and teased, "I guess the beggar sect really is nothing special if you're getting beat up by the Hao Sect." To which Jang snapped, "Does she look like a regular member of the Hao Sect to you?" "She's the daughter of the Hao Sect's leader, the future head of the entire intelligence network. She eats miracle medicines like candy and was raised with all kinds of resources and elite training. How could I possibly match her?" And as he was ranting, Nang Nang reappeared silently behind him and said, "I've brought the information." Jang yelped in surprise, practically jumping out of his skin, while Yonho simply smiled and said, "Oh, thanks." Nang Nang's eyes narrowed slightly and she added, "However, we do have our own rules." Yonho tilted his head and blinked, clearly not understanding, so Jang whispered, "She means the information fee," and Yonho asked, "How much?" And Nang Nang replied, 5 nyang. Yonho immediately handed it over and said, "That's cheap. Here." But Jang's eyes bulged and he quickly clarified, "She means 5 silver nyang." Yonho paused, blinking again, then asked, "Why is it so expensive?" Nang Nang answered coolly, "Because it's high security information and high security comes with a high price." Yonho sighed in understanding and then without a word began walking away. Nang Nang's eyes widened slightly and Jang asked, "Where are you going?" Yonho replied over his shoulder, "What do you think? I have to go earn 5 silver nyang." And as he continued walking, Jang dropped to his knees and grabbed Yonho's leg while lying on the floor. "No, I brought you here for a reason." And Yonho asked, What do you want me to do?" Jang panicked, "Wait a second." And in the next moment, Jang Il used up all the money Yonho had earned from begging, along with his own hidden emergency stash, and even borrowed what he didn't have with an IOU just to pay the 5 silver nyang, his hands trembling as he did so, and inside his head he thought, "My heart, it aches so bad." Yonho looked at him and asked, "Are you crying?" And Jang snapped back angrily, "Hey, you evil bastard, I had to spend all my hidden savings." But Yonho, with a casual and completely uncaring expression, said, "This is really thorough. This intel is way more detailed than the stuff the beggar sect collects. I guess you guys really are on different levels." And then, as if remembering something, Yonho added, "Also, I want to send a letter to Guangdong." Is that going to be expensive too?" And Nang Nang, who had been quietly observing, replied, "It'll cost more than an escort agency. But I'll do it in exchange for answering a few questions." And without hesitation, she began, "What's your name?" Yonho answered, "Why Yonho?" Then she asked, "Your age?" And he replied, "I'm 17. Jang's jaw dropped. "What, you're younger than me?" And Nang Nang, wide-eyed, thought, 17. His martial prowess isn't something a 17-year-old should have. And she stared at him for a moment before her eyes lit up with realization and she asked, "Guangdong's Wai Yonho. Are you the second son of the Wai clan?" Yonho blinked, You know me." And she replied, "Of course. The Wai clan of Guangdong requested our assistance to locate you." Jang looked at him and said, "Wai Yonho, the second son of the Guangdong's Wai clan, your Sanho's younger brother." And Yonho asked again, You know my older brother?" To which Jang proudly said, "Of course, I'm his friend." Then Nang Nang asked, "Are you sending the letter to the Wai clan?" Yonho nodded and she informed him, "It'll take at least 10 days to arrive." And Yonho replied with a faint smile, "That's fine. They waited 5 years. 10 more days won't hurt." Then she handed him a red rope and said, "Tie this somewhere visible. It marks you as a special guest of the Hao Sect. When an informant sees it, they'll come find you." And inside her thoughts swirled, someone strong enough to take down the 4 swords at 17. There's no one like that in the entire Central Plains. Yonho then casually asked, "Can I get that information for free now?" And she snapped back, "No," but then, pausing for a second, she thought again, creating a connection with someone like him would benefit the Hao Sect, and then she smiled and said, "In that case, next time I'll give you information for free." Yonho perked up, "Really?" And she replied, "It's just for you. We don't want to lose you as a client over what happened earlier." Yonho laughed uncontrollably and said, "Nothing really happened, right?" And off in the corner, Jang muttered, "My face looks like a dumpling and I've been rendered completely broke." Yonho laughed even harder and said, well, it happens often. You're just a loser. And Jang snapped, I am not. Then in the next scene, they were walking outside surrounded by people bustling about, chatting and living their lives, and Jang trudged beside Yonho, grumbling, damn it, my money. Yonho chuckled and said, money comes and goes. A beggar shouldn't be greedy. Tap into your beggar roots. And Jang screamed inside his head, I can't even beat this guy up. Then out loud he said, anyway, you got your information, so we won't have to see each other again, right? Yonho blinked, then suddenly turned around and grabbed Jang's shoulder and said, wait, well, there's a small problem. Jang's eyes narrowed. What now? And Yonho replied cheerfully, I don't have any money. At that moment, Jang's expression broke completely, his veins bulging, rage boiling over, and he screamed, shit. While back at the Hao Sect's tower, Nang Nang stood at a high window and said, Gongmo. And the masked assassin stepped forward and said, yes, branch leader. And she spoke quietly, barely holding her emotions together. Send a letter to the sect. Tell them the second son of the Guangdong Wei clan, the one who went missing, and a tear rolled down her cheek, has returned as a martial master. Meanwhile, Yonho stood in front of the grand gates of the great Hanam Institute, ready to enter. The compound was serene, beautifully built with refined architecture, with a separate small building designed specifically for leisurely games like Go. Inside, a dignified man sipped tea, looking out at the view and said, how nice. He was none other than the third grand scholar Mun Yuhun, and soon a young girl entered and said, Father, it was Mun Yunji, his daughter. A guest is here for you. Yuhun replied, I don't have anything scheduled today, but she added, he says he wants to play Go with you. And hearing that, Yuhun's face lit up with joy. Go. Well then, how exciting. Yunji led Yonho into the room and Yonho said politely, I hope I'm not intruding. And Yuhun smiled warmly, of course not. It's always a pleasure to receive guests. Then added, I hear you want to play Go with me. And Yonho said, it's the only game I know how to play. And Yuhun nodded, very well. Let's give it a go. I'll play the white stones. You go first. Yonho nodded, I'll begin, and took the black stones in hand. Yuhun glanced at him and thought, he doesn't look like much, probably here for a free meal. I'll play a quick game and send him off. But the moment Yonho made his first move, there was pressure in the air, unexpected intensity in his fingers, confidence in every motion. Yuhun's eyes narrowed. Huh? He's not a beginner. And as the game unfolded, the board filled quickly. Yonho's moves were fast, deliberate, sharp tap, THOCK, tap, THOCK. The rhythm was relentless, and Yuhun began to struggle, sweat forming at his temple, thoughts racing. He's fast, precise. It's rare to see someone his age this experienced. More stones placed, the tempo rising. Yuhun's hand trembled, breath unsteady. What the hell? He's not just fast, he's like a war demon. And across the board, Yonho tilted his head with a laughing smile and said, aren't you going to go? Yuhun sat with his arms crossed, watching the Go board with focused eyes as Yonho placed another black stone. His movements fluid yet unpredictable, each step on the board like a crashing wave. And in that moment, Yuhun, despite his years of experience and status as the third grand scholar, felt overwhelmed, thinking to himself, his playstyle, it's like angry ocean waves, crashing boldly forward, rushing ahead even when unnecessary, just for the sake of battling. And he continued mentally, he plays like someone crazed for fights, attacking without hesitation the moment he sees even the smallest opening, like a starving demon biting down with no fear of consequences. And as the last stone was placed and the game ended, Yuhun slowly looked up and exhaled, saying, that was a good game, you have a very unique playstyle. To which Yonho replied casually, thank you, and added with a grin, it's because of all the bullying I endured from my master. Yuhun blinked, you had a master? And Yonho nodded, yeah, a very strict old man. And then with a chuckle, he mimicked his master's voice. He used to say, if you lose, your training's gonna be 10 times harder. If I lose, I'll give you 3 days of rest. And with a sigh, Yonho finished, of course, I never won, so I've never had a day off in my life. Yuhun laughed, a real hearty laugh, as he patted his knee and said, that kind of teaching leaves its mark. Then with a softer expression, Yonho said calmly, if it's not too much to ask, I'd love to stay over for a bit. My master told me to stay in Rulin for a while. And Yuhun replied warmly, ah, you're following your master's teachings, of course, I'll help. I'll prepare a room for you, stay as long as you like. Then he turned to his attendants and said with respect, prepare a room and fresh clothes for him. Guide him to the bath as well. And Yonho blinked before quietly adding, but I don't have any money. And Yuhun just laughed, ha ha ha. I wouldn't expect payment from a guest like you. Honestly, if you hadn't asked, I was going to ask you to stay anyway. Then added, in return, just play Go with me or my guests from time to time. Yonho smiled and nodded, I can do that. Then see you around. And one of the girls said, come with me, leading him to the bath, where Yonho leaned back and let out a long sigh of bliss. This is nice. I hated baths when I was younger. Maybe it's because this water is so good. My skin feels cleaner already. And as he leaned his head back and closed his eyes, the face of old man Muhan appeared in his mind, and he muttered, I'm almost gonna cry from how nice this is. This is all that damned old man's fault. And just then the girl appeared with a towel and stared at him, confused, thinking, I don't get it at all. Why did father accept someone like him as a guest? And as Yonho stood next to her, fully naked, she screamed, face red, and shouted, I thought you were a ghost. Please cover up. Yonho blinked and took the towel calmly, smirking slightly, and then struck a pose as water dripped from his chiseled physique, asking smoothly, is that good enough? And the girl's face turned red as she stared and whispered, who are you? And a few days later in the institute, the same girl stormed into her father's room, frustrated, and said, please say something to that person. Yuhun looked up from his book. Who? And she replied with crossed arms, the new guy. Then launched into a rant. He doesn't leave his room at all. He sleeps all day unless he's eating. That's all he's done all week. And Yuan rubbed his chin, then said absent-mindedly, I forgot to ask his name. And she shouted, you said sloth is a sin. You told me one should always stay active. Why are you not saying anything about him being lazy? He might be a guest, but he's ruining the atmosphere. And Yuan looked at her calmly and said, Yunji, I like Go. And she blinked as he continued. You can learn a lot about someone when you play Go with them. You can hide your face in your words, but you can't hide yourself when you're placing stones on a board. An impatient person can't play patiently, and someone who doesn't enjoy struggle can't enjoy battle. When I played with him, I saw everything. His playstyle was rushed and rough. I've never seen anything like it. He's definitely not lazy. And he added, I assume he's lived a very difficult life. When the sun shines brightly, the shadows cast are just as dark. If he's resting now, it just means his path until now has been harsh. And finally said, one should not chase away a bird that flies under your roof to escape the rain. You don't question the bird for not flying back into the storm, just let him rest. Yunji exhaled sharply and said, all right. But when she entered Yonho's room, what she saw made her clench her fists. This is what I defended. The room was a total mess, dishes on the floor, and Yonho lying dead asleep under a pile of blankets, and she screamed in her head, Father's been deceived. There's no way this lazy bum is who he described. I'm getting him kicked out. And she stormed over, stood on top of him, and yelled, get up. And Yonho peeked out from under the blanket. Why? She shouted. The sun's already up. And Yonho blinked, confused. Really? Then let me know when the sun sets. Barely holding herself together, she screamed, what the hell is wrong with you? Everyone here studies. Why are you the only one doing nothing, just sleeping for a whole week? And Yonho replied with half-lidded eyes, they're studying because they want to study. I'm sleeping because I want to sleep. What's the problem? And she lost it. S8, shut up. I can't stand watching you roll around without even bathing. Who do you think is washing your sheets? You should at least do something to pay for the food you eat. You probably don't know, but we're not that well off. We can feed people who study, but we can't feed someone who just lazes around. And Yonho responded, but your father said. She cut him off, I'm the one in charge of the money. Then took a deep breath, calmed herself, and said, fine, do the laundry. And Yonho stared at the massive pile and asked, all of this? She snapped, it's not that much. And Yonho asked again, this will cover my food. You'd think you're putting gold flakes in my rice. And she laughed, walking away. Good luck, make sure it's clean. If anything's not done right, I'll make you do it again. Deserve this. There's no way he'll finish that by today. But 2 hours later, when she returned, she saw all the clothes and blankets washed, dried, folded, and sparkling white like they were brand new, and she gasped. How the hell did he do that? Were they always this white? And now determined, she set off to find him again, thinking, no, I can't let him laze around again. I'll get him. And the next scene, Yonho stood in front of a huge pile of chopped wood and calmly asked, all of this? And Yunji, laughing uncontrollably, said, I'll give you a week. You'll quit after a day. But a few hours later, with her eyes wide, she saw the work nearly done and thought, what the hell, that should have taken 10 people 10 days. And then the dishwashing, gardening, every single task she threw at him, he completed with perfection, and now she stood blinking in disbelief. How is he so capable? And thus why Yonho's rule in life began. But far away, an old man told the tale to a curious girl. But it was a mistake to take him in. He never should have let that guy into his home. And the girl asked, why? And the old man replied, because that guy brings disaster wherever he goes. It might not be intentional, but trouble follows him like a shadow. And laughing uncontrollably, he added, it was the same with Rulin. Scholar Hall that had been so quiet and peaceful was swept into chaos the moment why Yonho showed up. And in a whisper, she asked, what happened? And the old man continued, it all began when, and back in the main timeline, Yonho sat at another Go board, eyes steady, thinking, how did this happen? I thought this was going to be an occasional thing. And Yuwen, watching from the side, said, they must have all received a letter. He must be really good if the third grand scholar personally invited everyone. I came here quickly too because I was curious. And by midday, the institute was packed with challengers, all coming to test Yonho's skills at Go. Some skeptical, some arrogant, but all left stunned. And Yuan sat quietly in the yard, writing a letter in silence, his brush flowing smoothly, the message simple, if time allows, come visit Rulin. A master of Go has appeared, and inside the Go room, Yonho sat with his usual expressionless face, tapping stones onto the board with effortless precision. His opponent finally looked up, sweating, and said, it's my loss, but Yonho only said coldly, next.